Wow, already, that was fast. I don't like microphones, but I know when I sit back there, I can't hear anybody, so I am going to use it. My name's Lori, and I am an alcoholic. Thank you, Mike, for asking me to speak today. I've been through this process with a loving God, a step study sponsor, and practice 10, 11, and 12 on a daily basis. I always have a hard time starting off. I don't even like speaking, but I have that responsibility today to give back what was so freely given to me, and that's the chapter we're on tonight, you know. Just a little background on myself, and I was just really, you know, I'm not going to get into a drunk-a-log because, you know, we don't do that in these meetings. We save those for traditional AA meetings, which I absolutely love. You know, but this is the teaching and studying of the 12 steps. So, and that was taught to me right from the beginning, to share what's on the step. And sometimes I go off, Mike, so give me a right if I start going off. I hate when I do that. So anyways, I'm exhausted, bear with me. My mother's been in the hospital. She's at end of life, and, you know, I'm sleeping in a hospital bed, and I'm just like no sleep, and I'm just exhausted. So my brain's like just gone. But anyways, I did some praying before I got here, of course. I always invite God in. Whatever comes out is gonna come out. And so anyways, I had really grown up, my parents were very loving, but it was just a lot of stinking thinking. My grandfather, I come from a line of boxers. My grandfather, his brother was won the Golden Gloves in the Boston Garden back, you know, late 40s, early 50s. My brother was into boxing. He had me on a punching bag. So I kind of had all this kind of, you know, stinking thinking growing up. My walls were up at a very young age. So, you know, I really focus on alcoholism, you know, the untreated alcoholism, the behaviors, the isolation, all the negative emotions. You know, it's a negative disease, and I was all over it right from the beginning. So, you know, real quick, by the time I got here, it's jails, institutions, and death. I ended up in a halfway house, which is an institution. I did numerous detoxes, and you know, I couldn't get it. And reason I couldn't get it because I had so much wreckage when I got here. When you walk out of a detox, if you don't have a solution, good luck. You better be desperate, and then you better be desperate and dying. Otherwise, it's not easy getting sober. Buckle up. And you know, until you get here and get to these meetings and start working, not to this particular meeting, there's plenty of 12-step methods out there. This is the method that works for me. But it is the steps that get us to a better way of living. And only then do our lives get better. You know, anyone can put the booze and drugs down, but, you know, and kind of talking about others. I guess before I get to that, though, you know, I'll tell you how I got to Big Book Step Study. So after that halfway house, I was there for 8 months. And in the midst of all of that, I lost everything. I was living in a very dark place. I had income property. I had 2 houses. Marriage was in dire straits. Lost it all. Relationships were broken. I was unemployable. Got fired from my last job. And after that, my last 5 years out there, a big blur. And there wasn't enough to fix me. I drank and drugged like a pig. That I'll tell you. So in the end, I lost everything, including myself. And again, it was a very dark place. And it's, you know, we talk about steps 10, 11, and 12. You know, we gotta do this, we gotta, you know, announce our credentials, and which kind of drives me nuts because we could probably get out of these meetings 20, 30 minutes early with all of that introduction. But you know, we gotta do our credentials. It is what it is. You know what I'm saying? So, but, you know, steps 10, 11, and 12, you know, AA, Alcoholics Anonymous saved my life. You know, these steps saved my soul, but sitting in traditional AA meetings was what I needed before I got to this process. I got active in a group, did all that stuff, and really getting active in a group probably saved my life at that time, setting up the hall, setting up the coffee. And, but steps 10, 11, and 12, when I got to this, you know, got to the other side, you know, you don't hear a lot of 10, 11, and 12 in traditional AA meetings, you know. They're usually open discussion meetings I'll sit in, you know. I love AA, I love gratitude meetings. I sit in a variety of meetings. This is the one, though. This is my meat and potatoes, though. This is where I'm here, you know, in a Big Book Step Study, try to get to one at least once a week. And I did that right from the beginning, you know, probably, I don't know, 11, 12 years ago maybe, since I've been through the process. But Step 10 really, it says, we continue, right? Step 11 is that we seek and improve, and step 12 is all in our affairs. So 10, 11, and 12 gives us no complacency, at all. You know what I'm saying? So those 3 steps, those latter steps, really, the solid they're my recovery. You know what I'm saying? And so I was 2 years sober. I was out in AA, right, and chasing meetings 7 days a week, and I couldn't quiet my mind. I mean, if you offered to pay me $1 million to shut my mind off for 1 minute, I would have lost the bet. And it's a horrible place to be. I could not quiet this mind. It's all about fear. It's all about control, and fear and control. It almost killed me. My control and my fear almost killed me. It really did. And my pride. I had a lot of pride. I would never ask for help. I mean, I'd be on my deathbed and I wouldn't have asked you for help. And my sponsor made it real clear to me that I better swallow my pride and start asking for help. And I needed to hear little things like that. She knew obviously how sick I was. And the chapter talks about this, carrying the message and helping through our own experience. We can help another alcoholic. So when I got to Big Book Step Study, my first meeting, it was the second time in my sobriety. I got on my knees and I asked God not to put anybody in front of me that I could cause any harm to. I was suicidal and homicidal. I knew the booze and the drugs took everything from me, and I wasn't willing to give in to a drink, but I would have been selfishly I would have just, blew my brains out, or harmed somebody else. Because I was the type of person, when I was in pain, I wanted you to feel that pain. I would have taken somebody out with me, So just that all distorted thinking. So when I wish I could remember what step we were on when I finally made it to my first Big Book Step Study meeting. I was in the back and I was listening to, thank God for all of you people, but you guys sounded normal. I remember going, man, I'm screwed. I am, and I used another word. You could probably read in between the lines. But I just thought I was totally insane, which I was. And I wanted what you people had, and it's either seek spiritual help or drink, and that was the point in my life where I was at. Drinking was not an option, so I thought I'll just stick this out and try it. But I was cussing the whole time. I'm like, this better work for me, or I'm gonna be pissed, And so I kept going. I made a covenant that I would be consistent with these meetings, to attend at least one Big Book Step Study meeting a week. I traveled an hour out of my way to get to that meeting. My sponsor was in Framingham. I was in Worcester. I got sober in the Framingham area, and I went back home after a few years, and I was in the middle of doing my writing. And you want to talk about still holding. I was 2 years sober when I was doing, and I was still gripping onto my seat for dear life. 3 years sober. Now I'm starting my 4th step, and I was out of my mind, literally. And so I began I embarked on this process, and, it wasn't easy. This work is truly remarkable. My directions were to begin reading, pages 84 to 88 when I started writing. It was all foreign to me. I didn't know what the sunlight of the Spirit was, but whatever that was, I hope it happens to me, you know what I mean? I was very diligent with doing the reading and the writing, and, so anyways, when I got to the other side of doing this work, it tells us in the book here somewhere where, we've taken a look at we took a look at the obstacles that were in our path, and which is, I think, step 5 they're referring to, and that path that they're referring to is the path to God, okay? And, 5, it says we have to face and be rid of these things. So 5, 6, and 7, we face these things, and 7, 8, and 9, we get rid of those things that have blocked us from God, and there's no coincidence with 8 and 9 that we get right with other people, with our amends, and now here we are on step 12, we're deepening and embroadening our, I can't even talk today, our relationships with other people, so we deepen and broaden our relationship with other people, so it's no coincidence the way these steps are all laid out, these steps are truly, really unbelievable. I love the analogy when people use the down escalator. So basically, when you're with these steps, so when you're walking up one step at a time, you're making a move. You know what I mean? You're still going up, but once you stop, you start coasting backwards. You know, and that's how these steps 10, 11, and 12 work that way. You know what I mean? So if you start coasting backwards, you know, we can't, for me, I've got to use these ladder steps in my life on a daily basis, you know, otherwise I'm going to end up back where I came from, and I desperately never want to be where I came from, you know, so these steps are so significant in my life today. And so the first part, this is the biggest chapter. The chapter is having had a spiritual awakening, you know, that's the first part. Carrying the message is the second part, and then practicing these principles in all of our affairs. This is the biggest chapter in Alcoholics Anonymous. This is a huge chapter, and it was funny because when the literature first came out, it says having had a spiritual experience. It wasn't having had a spiritual awakening. So the experience actually came from Bill W. And when Bill W. had his experience, it was so profound that what happened when he started talking about this in the literature, having had that spiritual experience. The other guys he was bringing, and they passed it on, people working with other people now. Well, other people didn't have that kind of white lightning experience that Bill W. had. So people were like calling the meal room and going down there saying, hey, I didn't have the same experience as this guy. You know, am I going to recover? So that's when they came out with the appendix in the back of the book. They now call it a spiritual awakening, because God comes to some people gradually, the educated variety. So we all don't have to have that, you know, major experience. Bill was an exception to the rule, you know what I mean? And so we all, it comes gradually, you know. For me, I had a very profound spiritual experience. I love Bill's story because I had the same profound experience. I'd been lifted off the ground. But that's not everybody's experience, and that's why it's so important that we all know that everyone's Dr. Silkworth talked about the psychic change. You know, that's a spiritual awakening. The spiritual appendix talks about, they call it, I think, a transformation. So whatever it is, transformation, a psychic change, you know, you've had your spiritual awakening, you know, welcome, you know, you've entered the sunlight of the spirit. You're now, you know, operating on life, you know, and on God's intuition now. That's how we move in life now. Once we get to this, up to these 12 steps, we operate on God's intuition, you know. And this, I love this chapter. This chapter, I kind of bulleted some stuff while I was in here. But that's my experience with the spiritual awakening. Carrying the message, the whole chapter is primarily about carrying the message. You know, carrying the message, actually, there's chapters 8 and 9, to the wives, the employers, and the family afterwards. Those chapters are awesome for like working with others, and they really talk about the principles too. You know, the principles that we use. So carrying the message, you know, working with others, that, you know, sometimes I think there's been some controversy on that with carrying the message. Some people think they should do the steps right away with their sponsees. Some people like to wait. I think it all depends on your own experience and where that individual, our experience helps that other alcoholic, you know what I mean? So, you know, so I was so beat up and mangled. I mean, my concentration was level was zero. If you gave me a book, I would have whipped it back at you. I wasn't ready, you know what I mean? So I can, because I was given that gift of such desperation, I can work pretty good with the newcomers now. I know where they're at, you know what I'm saying? If I know they're like me, I ain't gonna push no book on them. I'm not. They just need to know that somebody cares in the beginning. You know what I'm saying? So I'll be a little gentle with them. I get to know them. I want to know what their relationships are like. I want to know, you know, what are they doing for work? Do they have children? Have you ever been to AA? You know, I kind of get to the nuts and bolts as to know who I'm kind of dealing with, so I can help them, you know. And, you know, and if you've been in AA, I mean, I've got women through this process that, you know, with double digits of sobriety, you know, and I'm at that point that I can't fix you, you know, it's either shit or get off the pot, you know. They're like, well, you know, when are we going to do the work? And I'm like, well, when do you want to get better? Because if you want to get better, that's when we're going to start the work, you know. So, and now, like I said, that's, you know, that's when we start getting better. But, And I love the chapter with the wives. I tell you, if you guys haven't really looked into those chapters, they're unbelievable chapters to look with working with others. To the wives, they really, actually there's a section in there that they talk about relapse and what we do after we relapse, you know, and it says right there in italics, and anything you see in italics in this book, pay attention to it. It means something, you know. And it says that we have to redouble our spirituality. So when we relapse, you know, we think about now diving in, getting back on track, you know, doing that, you know, 10-step and whatever that is, we start diving in and we start working with others. You know, it's critical, and it says in the book it's critical, you know, that we work with others, you know. I mean, also I feel, you know, so for me, I kind of just feel the newcomer out. I believe in doing the steps, and I know that's how they did it right away in the beginning, but it depends all on where they're at today. You know, so there's been, you know, sometimes, you know, people, you know, we'll see different, won't see eye to eye on doing the steps right away with a newcomer, you know what I'm saying? So, but I also feel that working with newcomers, you know, when somebody, you know, reaches out to me, or we take numbers in the hall, I'll sit in traditional, you know, open AA meetings, and I'll take numbers with a new girl, and they're passing around numbers, and I call that girl. You know, I'll call her, and because I know how heavy that phone is. And truth is, folks, they, you know, I don't call them because they're sick. I call them because I'm sick. I'm sick. I need them, probably more than they need me. You know, so I don't believe in saying, you gotta call me, you gotta call me, you gotta call me. I think that's BS. I think we should be picking up the phone and calling them, you know, and you don't want to enable them either. They do gotta learn to pick up the phone, but you learn to, you know, to work on that, and, you know, you want to help them along a little bit, you know, and you know when they're ready, you know. So when they get in now, you know, the next one with, you know, practicing, now they talk about, you know, practicing these principles now in all of our fears. That's the third part in this chapter, and the principles that they're talking about are simply the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's what the principles are. So we're practicing these principles with our families, our friends, and our sponsees, you know, and I kind of bulleted a couple here because some of the principles are kind of like right here. So it says, let's see, when your prospect has made such reparation as he can to his family and has thoroughly explained to them the new principles, which they're referring to, the 12 steps by which he is living, should proceed to put those principles into action at home. So it's the 12 steps that we've been taught. We've got so much wreckage going on, and now we're going to practice these principles in our own home. And I got to tell you, working with immediate family is not easy, and they're your best teachers. You know, they really are. You really got to, like, I mean, and your co-workers too. You know, I can deal with really pretty much anyone out there, but it's always with my immediate family. I've learned a lot about learning to pause, about being patient and tolerant. You know, some of our family members are acting out too. You know what I mean? When we get sober, we've done some work on ourselves, and they still got some resentment going on, and their character defects are glaring. And you know, we got to be patient with them. You know, so yeah. You know, so it says here, you know, another one, however, the alcoholic continues to demonstrate that he can be sober, considerate, and helpful regardless of what anyone says or does. You know, again, these are the principles that we're living by now. You know, let an alcoholic continue his program day by day. And I like that saying because program, I think that word is misused. You know, you hear a lot of people say, I'm in the program, I'm in the program. The program is actually the 12 steps. That's what the program means. And I hope you're in the program, and I hope you're living and working those 12 steps. You know, but, so, let's see. I mean, and on the wives and the chapters with the wives, I actually pulled it up. There is a ton of principles. Like, I mean, this page, from pages 111 to page 135, the principles are unbelievable. Patience and good temper are most necessary. Like, our next thought is that you should never tell him what he must do. You know, this is when you're working with an alcoholic. Let's see. So now we've got this relationship with God. We're dependent upon our relationship with Him now, you know. And we follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world. And that's again, now, since we've now gotten to the other side, we're now, you know, moving in a way where, you know, moving and operating on God's intuitions, you know. I love the way, you know, it talks about, like, and I just forgot what I was going to say. Anyways, you know, sometimes you sit in AA meetings, what I wanted to touch on too before, we would sit in AA meetings and I hear over and over again, and it drives me berserk, you know, they're on, you can hear people saying, you know, step 1, 2, and 3, step 1, 2, and 3, you're going to be on that for a year, you know, and I hear that and it frustrates the crap out of me, because after we do our formal third with our sponsees, on the next page, it says, next, we launch on a course of vigorous action. So we don't do step 1, 2, and 3 for a year or 2 years. You know, it says next. So we move right to the 4th step. When I'm done with my formal thread with the girls, they leave my house with a 3-ring binder and your first set of directions. And, you know, so step 1, 2, and 3 isn't going to get you better. Step 1, 2, and 3 designed to put us in a place where we become willing to turn our life and our wills over to God. That's what step 1, 2, and 3 are about. And that's the discussion we have when I'm with the girls, you know, when I'm sitting with them. It's designed to put us in that place that we become willing, you know. But we have to have a solid structure. The book talks about a solid structure, and, you know, that's solid. I love Bill's story because Bill talks about that foundation. You know, we have the foundation, the cornerstone, and the keystone. The foundation, you know, when Ebby came to see Bill, he talked about, you know, he didn't have a higher power, and it only took a matter of willingness, and he could build from that, you know, and so the willingness really is, and you got to have, for a strong structure, you got to have a strong foundation, right? So, you know, with a strong foundation, so the willingness, you know, is the foundation, believing is the cornerstone, and then we have the keystone, which is the supporting stone, you know, and step 3 is the keystone. And that's the supporting stone for all the 12 steps, you know, the whole structure, which is the 12 steps. And I felt solid up to that point, you know, with all of my stones. And the step 5 even talks about our stones properly in place, you know what I mean? So these are all significant. And a lot of people, I don't think, know really what all of those, and the stones properly, can you mix mortar without sand? Like, I didn't understand all of that. And if anyone wants to, you know, stick around after the meeting, I can explain that part to you. But anyways, this 12-step is huge. It is critical in my life. And, you know, again, with my mother being in the hospital, I mean, my character defects might have, they weren't glaring, but I was speaking my mind in a tone that I kind of wasn't pleased with. And I can't help that because, and I noticed it with me, I become very defensive with my family, with people who I love and care about. I get very defensive. And with my mother not being well, matter of fact, she was awake for a minute. She co-signed my shit. So, did you hear Lori? She just says she only gets defensive when it comes time for her family with the one she loved, because my brother was kind of doing something. But somebody had made a comment, and I stood up for him. But anyway, So I'm not perfect at this, you know, and I love step 10. Step 10 is where we, you know, step 4 we got right with ourselves, and step 10 we continue to deepen and broaden our relationship with ourselves in step 10, you know, and it's been just such a beautiful journey for me. I have a ton of problems that go on in my life, but I don't let them own me. And when I sit and do my meditation with God, when I go to Him, like I chase Him like I was chasing that stuff, and He's everything in my life today. You know, my problems, when I sit with Him, it really just builds a bond of trust, you know, with Him and I. You know, that's how much I trust Him and love Him. Like, He is so amazing. I've been rocketed into that 4th dimension with an existence I never thought would ever happen for me. Like, I saw my motivations. My motivations direct my thinking directs my actions. And you know what? If my motives are pure, it's going to be a God, my actions will be God-centered if my motives are pure, you know? So, but anyways, I love this process. Working with others has been the highlight of the bright spot in my life. It's something you don't want to miss. I never had any friends, and guess what? I got friends today, and the girls that I've walked through this process we've become very close with. But I don't know how much time I've taken up, but I should probably stop there. And thank you for having me today, Mike.